We're going to be talking about the persecuted parents, specifically from the COVID lockdowns. The parents were being persecuted. The students were being persecuted, coming from the top down.
Parents were coming, and kids coming to our coffee shop saying, look, these COVID policies are leading to our kids committing suicide, having mental health issues, physical health issues. People are coming to you desperate for help. You have parents crying on your shoulder. We had a kid in our neighborhood go out in the desert and shoot himself. The youth suicide was covered up because the school districts were getting money, and you're going to see what they did to our family and others as well.
We know right now that when it comes to the elite, when it comes to the globalists, they have and will continue to make parents specifically the enemy.
According to FOIA documents that I've received and the dates and the timeline, which we're going to go over, that is where John Carruth from the Vail School District got in touch with the National School Board Association. Merrick Garland and the Biden administration got involved, and then the FBI started hunting, monitoring, profiling parents. So put yourself in my place and my wife's place. People are coming to you asking for help. What are you going to do, especially if you're a Christian? Are you going to pass by on the other side? Are you going to hide and say, well, sorry for you, I'm just going to save my own skin? Absolutely not. The data was out there even at that time. So there's really no excuse for people to say, well, we were just doing the best we could with the information at hand. And you're going to see that I presented this information to the Vail School District and it because they were getting millions of dollars. I've done digging. I've had 4 years to research this, and I have the emails where they communicated this, and this went all the way to the federal level. And these parents who are concerned because their children were being driven to suicide and mental health disorders, deprived of an education, instead of being listened to, they were attacked, and it was because of money.
This is where we need to get the truth out like never before, because the public is listening.
Do this. Do you think it is appropriate for the FBI to be sending agents, including counterterrorism agents, to the parents of children who went to school board meetings and asked about critical race theory in their schools, asked about the school's masking policy during COVID? Should those parents be treated as domestic terrorists?
Parents who have the courage to ensure their children are taught what they feel is right, and those who have the courage of their convictions to go houses of worship, in my book, will never be domestic terrorists.
I'm delighted to hear you say that. You're familiar, I am sure, with this memorandum issued by the Attorney General, the last Attorney General, Merrick Garland, directing the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to look into parents who went to these school board meetings. And we know from whistleblowers who've come forward to this committee and given us the evidence that, in fact, the FBI opened multiple cases against multiple parents across the nation, I believe, including in my home state of Missouri. Another gross abuse, incredible political power brought to bear against everyday citizens. Why? Because they went to a school board meeting that they're paying for and asked about what their kids were being taught. Once again, I can't imagine, I couldn't have ever thought this would happen in the United States of America. Will you find out who was involved in this policy within the FBI, who agreed with it, who implemented it, who encouraged it? Will you find out that, Mr. Patel? Will you do an internal investigation? And will you make clear that those who supported this policy are appropriately disciplined? And will you make clear that the FBI will never do something like this again?
If confirmed and pursuant to your congressional request, absolutely, Senator.
Thank you.
The federal government targeted innocent parents who were trying to be advocates for their children.
September 29th, 2021, the National School Board Association sent a letter to Joe Biden asking for federal assistance dedicated to these dangerous parents, and this whole domestic terrorist narrative came about. By October 4th, Merrick Garland issued the memo designating parents as domestic terrorists. Then October 18th, there was a letter by 14 attorneys general sent to Garland and Biden citing this National School Board Association letter as a massive fraud. 1 week ago, in a letter dated October 18th, 2021, my fellow attorneys general and I laid out the facts surrounding the massive fraud that the National School Board Association has perpetrated on the American people. In a letter to the Department of Justice, NSBA accused parents throughout the United States of, quote, domestic terrorism and hate crimes, warranting the invocation of the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism.
We've never seen it in our lifetimes until the nonsense of COVID and the masking and the mandates started to happen. Nobody had ever seen anything like this in our lifetimes. We would never dream that mayors and governors could be so wicked, that school boards could be so wicked. Really, the ugly underbelly of our fellow Americans. We saw it, and it's hideous.
Parent out in Arizona who's being targeted right now. He was telling me that basically, he's being targeted by the FBI over, of course, this whole school boards thing. And he was saying that, they've had some serious stuff. The stuff parents are dealing with is insane. Parents are dealing with not only the transgender movement being pushed on their kids to the extent that the schools are even trying to hide information from parents, giving instructions to children as they tell children that they can make life-altering decisions such as chemically castrating themselves or physically castrating themselves, irreversible processes, things that will force them to conduct regular medical procedures on themselves for the rest of their lives, while not being properly told that what that actually means and the consequences of it, and while being told to not tell your parents they're being told this stuff.
Time to do what a growing list of countries have done and announced we're going back to something more like normal, beginning with recognizing that what we're doing to kids is unnecessary and horrible, and I don't even like kids. But making kids who have a COVID survivability rate of 99.98% mask up like bandits. Unfortunately, the thing that's getting stolen is their education, their sanity, and their social skills. A study this week from a professor at Johns Hopkins concluded that the lockdowns we all suffered through had little impact in reducing COVID deaths. Okay, that's kind of a big one to get wrong. I'm just asking, how much wrong do you get to be while still holding the default setting for people who represent the science?
Getting death threats to kill my children. We're getting doxxed. Our employees were terrified.
In this episode, we're sitting down with Kelly Walker and Sam Sorbo, co-founders of the Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, PDJA. They have put together a dossier detailing actions taken by local authorities to censor, surveil, and pressure parents who protested policies during the COVID-19 pandemic.
They claimed that 3 large fathers had stormed the school. They made us out to be the worst kind of terrorists. I got sentenced to 100 days in jail and $10,000 in fines. I was told I had to scrub my social media and be quiet.
So much for having us. So we're talking obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, which Kelly Walker and I co-founded. And it is to defend these parents who were under attack under Merrick Garland. You might remember the infamous memo that categorized parents who were speaking out at school board meetings as domestic terrorists. And Merrick Garland went so far as to involve the FBI. We now have the receipts. We've discovered the emails that went back and forth, including emails from his own lawyers at Justice telling him that he is infringing on parents' First Amendment right. And he's saying, oh no, in defense, we were just targeting the violent parents. But Mel, there were no violent parents. And we've proven that now. And so really this was a campaign to silence those individuals. But more importantly, it was a campaign to silence all the rest of the parents. And so I just want to wish everybody a happy back to school season. Parents are not invited. The schools do not want parental influence. They don't want parental input. And I can only imagine why you would want to estrange the parents from the child, and it's not for any good reason. It's all nefarious. We formed Parents Demanding Justice Alliance with Kelly, who is probably patient zero of this whole thing because he was so egregiously attacked. They ruined his business. He had to move states. He sold his house. They stole money from his account, and he'll tell you that story. There are so many parents out there. We've compiled a dossier of over 50 parents now, and we are working it through the system as best we can.
There's gotta be thousands.
Yes.
This was an attack on good parents that don't go along. It was an attack on dissent going for your parents, because you all 3 of us know the children are the goal.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Freedom Talk. Hamlet, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you saw me walking. I'm in a birthday party, so it was so loud. So I came to my car so I can be quiet. Let me put the lights on over here. I'm sorry for that.
Great, no problem. Well, I want to welcome everyone. It is October 4th, 2025, which is exactly 4 years, happy anniversary, you might say, from when Merrick Garland issued the now infamous memo from the Department of Justice and the FBI designating parents as so-called domestic terrorists.
So Hamlet, welcome. You're our first guest. We expect others coming in anytime now. We've got several people watching. I think it's good to start with you, actually, and thank you for taking the time out of a birthday party, because I think your story started in 2011. And actually, similarly, I think around 2013, I started having conflict with schools that were trying to really replace my role as a parent, trying to block me out. But maybe tell a little bit about your story, Hamlet, to get us started.
Thank you very much. In 2011, my wife and I was living in a town outside of Philadelphia, and we decided to move back to Philadelphia just 2 months before the school ended. That was a problem because we left my daughter in the school to continue and finish. And let me clarify, this was kindergarten. My daughter was just 6 years old. The district attorney, the school district didn't like that I allowed my daughter to stay in the school when we wasn't living in that school district anymore. We offered to pay for the time that we're going to be out of the district, but she still refused to leave my daughter in the school and actually chose to go in a different direction. She chose to bring criminal charges against me and my wife for allowing my daughter to stay in a school where she wasn't resigning anymore. This was something that I never expected. It was very crazy. When people, my friends heard about that, they could not believe it. I say, let me go to Google because something else has to be behind this. You was doing something else. No, but simple, a matter of zip code. This was based on the zip code. And we was facing 7 years in jail. We was treated as a criminal. My wife and I, we went to jail for a couple of hours because until we was able to play bail, and then we have a trial. And thanks God, at the time of the trial, because we work very hard with attorneys from out of state, we have to hire attorney from Florida to represent us because the attorneys in Philadelphia, they was very afraid to the teacher union. They was very afraid to the. Let me be clear, to the Democrats. Which is they the one that did this to me, and I have to get an attorney from Florida. And once I get my attorney from Florida, that's when they realized that, okay, Mr. Garcia really want to fight the charges. So I fight it. We went to trial, and right before that we was going to start the trial, it was picking the jury. They decided to drop the criminal charges because they realized I was working very hard and on my freedom, which is. I believe no family should lose the freedom by providing education to a child in a public school. That was my case. At that time, it was a high-profile case, but I learned that it wasn't only me because my case went so public. I had so many people coming to me with the same problem. Hamlet, this happened to me. I learned about Kelly William Bollard, an African-American lady that she went to jail with her dad. And her dad died of a heart attack in jail just because her daughter was being bullied in the other school when she was supposed to attend. So her grandfather said, hey, come to my school that I'm paying taxes anyway, move over here with me and come to the school. Well, the school district and that school didn't like that her granddaughter was going to that school as well and brought criminal charges to Kelly William Bollard and to her granddad. He died in jail from a heart attack from the stress. In my case, they was asking for 7 years in jail. 7 years in jail if I was found guilty of leaving my daughter for kindergarten. We have to understand that this was kindergarten. To leaving my daughter finish her kindergarten in a school outside the zip code. When I did the investigation on my case with my lawyer, when we did the discovery of evidence, it got me more sick to my stomach reading the conversation between the teacher union and the school district superintendent, telling them, continue, pursue the case. We want to send a message. We want to send a message. That caught my attention. And I say, because I never been involved in politics, I say, what message? What message? And I say, I know what is the message. A message to Latinos and African Americans in Philadelphia, that if you dare to cross the line and come to a better school, this can happen to you. So they use me and my wife to send a message, to scare others, to trying to do the same. Because they want us to be confined to the world's education system, so we always be government dependent.
Yeah, that's terrible. So how long do you think the schools have been at odds with parents, and how deep does this go? Because by 2020 and 2021, we started to see parents really attacked.
And a lot of the kids were home because the schools were shut down. Parents were starting to see, hey, wait a minute, I don't think I like what they're teaching our kids. So a lot of this came out in the open, but back before this, what laid the groundwork for this, in your opinion? And were the schools pro-parent or anti-parent?
The school is anti-parents, and this has happened way before COVID, right? As you know, but they have one line, and it's about to teach about the left. A school and right this day in America is becoming about teaching education that has to be with the left ideology. I was born in Cuba. I know what is a socialist, and what I see that they teaching today is very similar that I learned in the school when I was in Cuba. And why they're doing that? Because when you want to build a socialist nation, when you want to build a communist nation, you need the children. You need those with a young mind, because people like you and me, we already know what we want in life. We have the ground already set. They always want to manipulate our children's so they can build a better socialist. That's what they call. So we have to be very careful with the teacher this day. Math, English, all the good material that you'll be teaching in the school. That's what we have to focus. But when they turn around and they're trying to teach you that if you want to be a boy, when you're a girl, it's okay to change your sex at 9 years old. We have to be very careful, because that's remind me my Castro regime.
Yeah. So did you see some parallels or maybe your parents in Cuba to sort of the moral breakdown that accompanies socialism? Because I know, going back to the Soviet Union, and Julie Beeling, who wrote Beneath Sheep's Clothing, you'll see that in her book and her special. One of the things that the communists, the Marxists do is break down the social order to create chaos. Did any of that happen in Cuba?
Yes, they want to disrupt the family nuclear. That's important for the socialists. Disrupt the family nuclear. So create problem between daughters and sons, mothers and father. This is the important part of the socialism. Create problem so the nuclears of the family will break in pieces and they can take advantage. Yes, I saw that. It happened in my house. It happened in my family. Let me give an example. Every time before we go home, it's always a picture of Fidel Castro's in each classroom, and they tell us, look, this is Fidel Castro. This is our man. If anybody in your house ever say anything wrong about him or disagree with the revolution, come to the school, talk to us, and we will take care of the problem. So they're always trying to intimidate us as children, that we should not let anybody in the house speak bad about the revolution. So parents sometimes are very afraid to their own children. In my case, my parents don't have to be worried, because I come from a family that was very, very strong anti-communist. So in the school, everything they tell me used to come over here and left to the other side when I left the school. But many other families wasn't looking like that. So imagine living in your own house, and you have to be very careful what you speak, because your child is 9 years old, can listen, and they can take it to the teacher and create your problems. And the problem is that you should not be created, because you should be in any country be free to criticize the government, right? You should be able to criticize the educational system. If the educational system is not good and it's just teaching ideology, you should be able to fight that. In Cuba, you can't do that. If you don't like what they teach in the school and you're trying to open your mouth, they push you in jail.
So what happens in this country if, thank goodness, we've had a change. Woke is backing down. People are starting to wake up. Let me ask you two questions. First of all, what happens if Marxism really takes over this country? And number two, do you have hope that we can overcome that and prevent that from becoming our future?
I got hope, because America is the land of opportunity. It's not a country like America. This is why we all, as an immigrant, always choose this country. But we have to be very careful, because this day, the Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party that used to be. Now it's the Socialist Party that is being hijacked by the left. I tell my friends they are Democrat. I have many good friends, Democrat, and I tell them, fight to get your party back. We need the Democrat Party to exist, because we need to have more than one political party in our country. But you have to get it back as a Democrat, because right now, as the socialist, it's very hard to argument. It's very hard to get reasonable with the socialists. Communists and socialists, they don't like to be compromised. There's only one way: their way or no way. So the education system that we have today in America, it still can be safe. If that's the question, I have hope and can be safe. And to do that, we need to continue electing good president. We need to electing good people to work in a school board, people that have our values and maintain the school safe and free of ideologies.
Absolutely. Well, I want to welcome Sam Sorbo. Sam, great to see you.
Hey.
And Dan Grossenbach. Dan, I know you're one of the targeted parents like me. We have Hamlet Garcia here. Hamlet actually experienced a lot of persecution from the schools, and he was just going over his story going back to 2011. But Sam, I'm going to give the floor to you right now to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about what we're doing with Parents Demanding Justice Alliance. And then Dan, we want to give you a chance to comment on your story.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I'm Sam Sorbo. We co-founded Parents Demanding Justice Alliance on behalf of all the parents who have been targeted by their school boards, their local law enforcement, based on the opinions of their school boards, school board members, or other people who are affiliated with the schools. And we've made a lot of headway. I don't know if Kelly has announced this yet, but there will be a hearing now for the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., where we will hear from several of the parents who were themselves targeted, and victims, I should say, who were victims of targeting. Because it is not a victimless crime. It's not simply, and this is bad enough, infringement of freedom of speech. But, we just heard from another parent recently that she has police who are just following her for apparently, seemingly no reason, because it's not like they've ever pulled her over, but she's noticing and she's documenting police following her around. So there are a lot of parents who are deeply affected by this. Some of them have lost their livelihoods. Some of them are struggling to get by, not to mention the psychological effects of this kind of targeting. And so very excited about the hearing that we're having coming up, and we'll see sort of what comes after that. But I think it'll be a very good way to bring faces and names to, to make it personal, so that the people at the DOJ really understand what they are fighting for. And in terms of trying
I want
to
to say something just very quick, because you mentioned something important. Yes, this kind of targeting to the family, it takes a toll financially. Just to give an idea, my case, something so simple, cost me over $100,000 to defend myself. We almost lose all the savings that we have in the bank. And my wife went to the hospital with, just when I remember, she went to the hospital very sick. She lost her hair. I couldn't recognize her anymore because the stress that they make her go through. We are licensed. We have a business for 18 years, and we have a professional license. We was about to lose our livelihood, everything that we have. We live in America for over 37 years and never have any problem with the law system. And for me to lose my business and my freedom just by providing education to my daughter in a public school, I was very devastated. And this, my wife took a bigger toll. She lost her hair. She was very stressed. And this was too much stress, and over $100,000 cost my defense, just to have an idea what they do.
And this is, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because this is one of the things that I want to bring to light. Is it's not that, yes, there's a financial cost, and yes, there's a cost in infringing on people's rights, and there's a psychological cost. There's an emotional toll that these people are paying for just sort of standing up for what's right, for just doing what is obvious to a lot of people. And then, of course, we should talk about the toll that everyone else is paying, because everyone else is now intimidated from speaking up, and they're afraid to come forward, and they won't defend their children when push comes to shove. And we can't afford to let that happen, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of parents in our dossier, by the way, you can go to realfreedomtalk.com and then go to the Parents Demanding Justice Alliance page, and you can see a dossier of targeted parents, which tells stories. Some of the names are redacted. You can also see videos, interviews that Sam's been in, Sam and I both, articles, a whole lot of information. Some of the documents, like the original memo that's brought us here from Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco, that caused so much trouble for people. So go over there and take a look. I'm going to really quickly play a little plug for Freedom Talk Magazine. And then when we come back, I want to welcome Dr. Crystal Marul from Florida. Thank you for joining us. I want Dan Grossenbach to be able to tell his story, but let's just take a little moment here, 1 minute break.
America's founders warned that without knowledge and virtue, no nation can remain free. Yet through the steady infiltration of Marxist ideology, we have been stripped of both, and we are no longer a moral and educated people. To save America, we must spark nothing less than a national renaissance. That's why you need Freedom Talk Magazine, the journal of truth and virtue. We cultivate enlightened thinking and principled living, offering unique insights into the issues and remarkable people defining our world. More than headlines, we craft the very ideas that drive them, engaging minds, sparking brave dialogue, and influencing current events. Freedom Talk shapes tomorrow's news at the headwaters of culture with an unflinching commitment to free speech and America's founding principles. And with new collaborations, like our partnership with Mike Lindell and others, we're now positioned in front of millions of freedom-loving people across TV, streaming, and grassroots networks. Sign up today for your free subscription to Freedom Talk Magazine and join the new American Renaissance.
All right, guys, thank you for waiting along with us. If you'd like to donate to Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, Sam was kind enough to basically allow it or facilitate it becoming a nonprofit. You can go to samsorbo.com. You donate there. If you happen to go to realfreedomtalk.com, you'll see a button there somewhere to donate. And what we use this for is not necessarily to build a big organization and staff and everything else. It's the essentials. It's travel, because on Monday morning, I'm traveling to Washington, D.C. And then thank goodness Sam told me the other day that we have a hearing with DOJ. We're going to be able to get in front of Pam Bondi, unless she gets called away on an emergency, then it'll be her second in command. But now I have to turn around again and fly out within days of getting back. So I say have to, but it's really a privilege to fight for all of these parents. And speaking of the parents, Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself and anything you'd like to share about your story, some of the things you've been through.
I'm sorry, were you asking about me, my story?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, well, forgive the outfit. Kelly texted me as I was about to jump in the shower after a workout, so I'm sorry to be extra cash today.
You're just showing your manliness as a bear, right?
Well, real quick about my story. I was trying to be a parents' rights advocate at my kids' school board, and like a lot of us, going there and trying to speak some truth, trying to be tactful and just encourage the board that all kids deserve to have parental involvement. And because of that, the segment that is very extremist and really activist on the opposing side came right after us. I mean, they were doing all sorts of stuff. I don't even know if all of it's in the complaint, but they were doing a lot of doxing and stalking and posting our house on social media and creating a page just dedicated to harassing us. But what happened with my job as a university professor at the local university here, I was a part-time adjunct professor in the School of Government, teaching ethics, by the way. They had this little campaign where 3 anonymous sources wrote in letters saying I'm anti-gay, leading this bigoted movement to attack trans kids because I think they shouldn't exist. And, very impassioned letters from, of course, anonymous people, to which the university then turned around and terminated my contract. But under false pretenses, they didn't tell me all of this. I had to find it through digging through public records after waiting 259 days to get them to finally respond, which all of this then bundled up into a nice little federal lawsuit that we filed in district court here about 6 weeks ago, thanks to Liberty Counsel, who's doing it pro bono, and they're doing an excellent job. So we expect by October 17th that they're going to respond, and however they respond, we're ready to go all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary, because we're very principled in this and looking to actually make change. The only other thing I'd want to add before moving on is that I when I heard about this group, I was really excited. But part of me thought, well, it seems so negative because we're talking about the punishment of parents and that we're just suffering and we're the victims. But I've since kind of seen 2 different benefits of it. number one, we're going to empower all those people out there that are scared and that are coward into not speaking up and speaking the truth and defending the kids out there. And then the number two thing is that hopefully we'll be able to have parents more involved in the lives of their kids, and that schools will be forced to, or maybe compelled to, involve parents more, which is what we should have had in the first place.
So I love that you're saying that, Dan, because that's my whole sort of vantage point. Is I come to this as a home educator, okay? And so my view is, or I shouldn't say my view, the statistics bear out that the number one indicator for academic success for a child is parental involvement. And that's why when I saw what Kelly was going through, I was like, we can't sit by and watch the schools ostracize the parents and disenfranchise the parents and alienate the parents or sideline them, because they are the best advocate for their child, and their involvement is the best indicator for the success of the child. So when a school seeks to marginalize parents, they are not seeking the academic success of that child. And so when you put those two things together, you either are for parents being involved in school because you want children to succeed, or you don't want children to succeed.
Yeah.
And right is that our schools are not interested in watching children succeed academically, but they are very invested in teaching them about sex and gender and all of DEI and CRT and all of the other alphabet soup that they call education today, which is anything but.
Yeah, that's right. I want to play a brief little clip here because a lot of this started in Vail, Arizona, where I lived. It's just a 1.5-minute clip, and I want to go to Crystal and let her tell a little bit of her story. But watch the news coverage on this at the time.
Last night, when a group of parents spoke out over the school district still requiring their kids to mask up there at the school. There was supposed to be a board meeting that was canceled just a few minutes before it was set to begin.
And that's when things really got heated with the parents. News 4 Tucson's Eric Fink was there and brings us the latest.
Let our children breathe!
Allowed.
And they do not have the right to take this away from us. These are our kids.
An at times angry group of parents making their way inside school district headquarters in Vail Tuesday night after a board meeting was canceled.
And they have the audacity to leave when we come here as peaceful parents to talk to them?
I understand what you're saying, but I have no... These are my rights as a parent, and they don't get to decide how I choose to raise them and what I believe is true and factual. It's disgusting what's being done, and I don't agree with it. I don't. I'm frustrated that my children are being forced to wear a mask every day for 7 to 8 hours with very few breaks, like when they get to eat, and it's not okay anymore.
Pima County Sheriff's deputies called out to try and keep the peace.
The smaller portion that likes to be louder than the others. But I believe the school district does a great job of hearing and putting the concern and safety of everyone.
Pull the kids out! Pull the kids out! Pull the kids out! Pull the kids out!
School officials telling me that the district is working on a letter to send to all parents here in Vail saying that nothing has changed. The mask mandate remains in place, so too do the school board members.
Nothing
Every
like...
time I see a video like that with mask, it just brings me memories back.
Yeah.
How terrible, right?
Yeah, and it's just that we like to be loud. That's why we were doing it, because we want attention. That was that school board meeting was April 27th of 2021. We had a meeting the night before in our coffee shop, Viva Coffee House in Tucson, Arizona, Vail, Arizona. And the parents had enough because they were seeing kids committing suicide because of these policies. And the reason they kept the masks in place was, let me find this slide. I want to show this to you as Crystal gets ready to present. But go ahead and Crystal, tell your story. But I'm going to put up a slide showing some of the money that particular school district was being paid by continuing to keep the masks on kids in spite of the suicide and everything that was happening. Crystal, please tell your story and tell us what's going on lately.
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to this. It's so great to see you again, Kelly, Sam. It's wonderful to see you as well. Dan, I guess it is. It's great to meet you. And I'm sorry I don't know the other gentleman who's online with us, but my name is Crystal Marule. I am a University of Florida professor. I'm in my son's bedroom right now because my husband's actually watching the Argentine soccer game right now out in the living room. So this is where I can find a quiet space. So I've been battling my school district for the past 2 years for parental rights. It's a long story with a lot of chapters to it. So I'm not quite sure the best way to summarize it, but maybe I'll go with the most recent incident, which you may have seen on national news, is I went to speak out at a school board meeting, a state board of education meeting. I'll back up a little bit. Our school board is absolutely atrocious here in Alachua County, and there's been a couple of recent issues. When Hulk Hogan died, our chair of the school board made comments saying, "Yay, one less MAGA in the world," and that created a lot of hoopla. There was a local school board meeting. A parent spoke out against her for that. The rest of the board had him removed, had the police remove him from the school board meeting. They ultimately let him stay after the lawyer said that wouldn't be legal for him to be removed. So anyway, our school district has created a lot of problems and a lot of noise. So they were called before the State Board of Educators in August. So I went to that meeting because I've had lots of issues with the school board. And at that meeting, I was sharing some of my perspectives as a parent of what's happened to conservative families in the school district, pointing out that this starts at the top. We have a very toxic school board. As you can see, they make public statements celebrating the death of Hulk Hogan. Since then, we've now had the other vice chair make statements about Charlie Kirk, saying he's an uneducated white boy. So they're clearly a very partisan and not just partisan, but vicious school board against anyone who is conservative. So I shared anecdotes that had happened with my family at that school board meeting, state board meeting, where they were being called out and put to task for it. And I shared with them that when my son was in high school in 9th grade 2 years ago, he had the teacher had allowed other students to refer to him as a Nazi sympathizer. She, in fact, endorsed and condoned that behavior. I had a conversation with her, and then at the end of the school year, she did superlatives and awarded him with the most likely to become a dictator award. And I held up the certificate of that thing, and that created a lot of viral clips about me speaking out about that. The State Board of Educators have since put that teacher on administrative leave. There's been an investigation into it. And that's just a culminating event that actually most recently happened. But prior to that, and due to the fact that my son had that horrible experience in 9th grade, we started homeschooling him, and he was going part-time to the high school for math, science, and ROTC. And when he was going part-time, he would hang out in the library between classes. And he had brought home some books for me from the school library that were very much inappropriate. I then checked out books that my youngest child had in his elementary school, and I challenged those books by following district protocol. I had to fill out a form, send it to the school principals. And the very first communication I had about my challenge was that the schools sent my identity to the local press, so that the local press then started put my name on the front page of the newspaper saying University of Florida professors trying to ban LGBTQ books and making me look like I was this homophobe, bigot, Nazi, et cetera, et cetera. So like Dan, in your situation, I wasn't discontinued from the university, but I've been frozen out of the university in the sense that my colleagues no longer interact with me. My summer teaching assignment was not renewed. I have not been appointed to a committee within my department since then. So there's been a lot of backlash simply for speaking out on behalf of my kids. So that was kind of a little all over, maybe not the best representation of my story, but that's where I'm at.
Wow. Yeah. So we started with Hamlet, whose trials and tribulations started in 2011, I want to say, and now we've flashed up to the forward to the present. And Jeremy Klepper, I think, is in your district as well. And I don't think Jeremy can make it tonight, but can you tell us a little bit what you know about what happened with him, just quickly?
Sure. So when our chair, Sarah Rockwell, made the comments about Hulk Hogan, and that went viral, Jeremy Klepper is a parent in our district. I didn't know him prior to this situation, but he decided to go to the school board meeting, the local one, to speak out against it on behalf of conservative families. And the school board is notoriously, they organize what I would call like a little mafia. So they have their little mafia of attendees that show up. They all wear matching clothing, and they have their signs, and they're this and they're that. And they're there to intimidate, scare, curse out, boo down anyone that opposes their preferred school board members. So I don't think Jeremy was aware of these strategies. It was the first time he had attended a school board meeting, as far as I'm aware. And he went and he spoke his mind. He was one of 2 people out of like 40 that actually spoke against Miss Rockwell and her bigoted statements against the conservatives. And when he finished his 2 minutes of comments or whatever it was, he went to go sit down, and all the audience members started shouting at him and booing at him and making comments or whatnot. And he said, listen, if you want to speak, he's like, hey, if you want to speak, you go sign up and wait your turn, just like I had to do that. And for saying that, the other school board member, Tina Certain, said to the police, can you please escort him out of here? So they went and I think they actually put their hands on him and started escorting him out of the school board meeting. He said, well, isn't this a public meeting? Don't I have a right to be here? And everyone started screaming, get him out of here, get him out of here. This is our meeting. This is our meeting. He's a white supremacist. Get that racist out of here. They took the microphone. One of our city council, I think he's a city councilman, he was next to speak. So he was at the dais with the microphone, and he handed it to one of the people in the room who were screaming all these racist comments at Jeremy Klepper. The whole thing was chaos. They cut the live feed of the meeting. They took him to the front of the room. Ultimately, the lawyer said, I don't recommend that you remove him from the school board meeting because it's not my recommendation. And so they finally said, okay, you don't have to go. But everyone was like really screaming at him, very hostile. It was a very hostile environment. So he said, I'll just leave. I choose to leave. So he left that meeting. But clearly the message went out that if you show up at these meetings and try to speak out, that similar things are going to happen to you. And then after that, that same mafia that we have here locally, they launched a social media campaign against him, which I've been targeted in as well. More recently, they dig through our history of everything. So any kind of criminal history he had, like a DUI that he had, they're putting that on the front page or blasting on social media. They're putting fake reviews of his business. They're doxing his address, talking about his family. Anything they can find about this man, they've been putting it out there. And he was just, a normal private citizen as a parent, and they're out there to destroy his livelihood and career for speaking out at the school board.
I just want to point out the whole thing is available on video. You can watch the entire exchange. He spoke fairly harshly without offering any kind of threat or personal anything. He just spoke harshly about a person who claims to represent everybody, but has such a strong opinion that thankfully there's one less MAGA in the world today after Hulk Hogan died. And so he said, you're a disgrace. You should be ashamed, things like that. But the thing I wanted to point out, Crystal, is after that, there was a woman who did a video and said that he threatened it looked like he was going to punch her. It looked like he was very violent seeming. She did this whole video and she completely made it up in her head because the video of his action was very bland in a sense. And so she just created this whole thing and said, he did this, he said this, he threatened, he made fists, he was, looked very vicious. And so there is a concerted campaign. And that's and if we don't stop it, it will.
They do it intentionally. Sorry that I interrupt you. I know exactly which video you're talking about. And I know the people behind those videos. I know the one who did that. She was the same one who was at the meeting, grabbed the mic, was saying, get him out of here, get him out of here. This is our activist. She's an activist, but then she's partnered with this other activist and they put out lies intentionally. Her sister activist was putting out, they were doing live feed videos, purportedly reading an email I had written about my son, saying that he was depressed and locked in his room and plays video games 12 hours plus a day. And then she attributes it to us having a incestuous, sexual, and emotionally enmeshed relationship. So they make it up. They do not care if it's true. They don't care if you can verify that it's truth, because by the time the truth catches up, those people don't care if it's true or not true. It's effective. So they will do it and they will do it again. It's an organized campaign to slur your reputation and destroy your livelihood. And truth is not a variable for them. It's who cares if it's true.
Yep. Kelly, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't hear you, Kelly.
Sorry, I'm doing all the production at the moment. We have this ongoing war against parents, and you'd think, well, Trump's in office, his administration's in office. Pam Bondi officially rescinded the Merrick Garland memo, but if anything, it's not gotten better; it's gotten worse.
Yes.
Sam and I keep getting more and more people contacting us, telling us their stories. Sam, it looks like you have something you want to say.
I was just agreeing with you. It's so fascinating because I think the general attitude is, well, we're winning. Like everything's going to be okay now. And unfortunately, that's dead wrong because the targeting is continuing. If anything, it's gotten worse now because they're threatened or something, and so they're trying to get all their licks in before it's too late. So many of the parents that we represent think that the heat's been turned up on them, and you've got Dan. Your case is pretty sort of shutting. What is it? It's pretty dry, right?
Mhm.
It's this happened, then they did this, and now we're going after them. And I'm not sure what else they can throw at you at this point because you did lose your job. But how easy is it going to be for you to find another job?
Yeah, for me, I'm suing the university for taking action on what people associated with the school board were slandering me about. But I think to answer your question, I mean, it's a little speculative, but I think they're taking advantage of the local control of local school boards. I mean, in a lot of states, they're limited. I mean, the Florida Superintendent of Instruction is doing things that very few states are doing, where they're really holding their feet to the fire and actually, freezing salaries and putting their licenses or certifications online, that kind of thing. For the most part, I think they're doubling down because yes, they're threatened, but they're also emboldened because they can do whatever they want within their sphere of local control because they're locally elected.
Right.
So that's what we're seeing here. And you'll see a lot of pushback on these TPUSA chapters starting up. We have one in our district that just started up, and all the teachers are scared to death to be anywhere near it because they say, oh, I don't want to get fired. So there's a lot of soft totalitarianism a little bit going on as well because they have their little kingdoms.
Yes. And I think that they've also recognized at this point that was the way to win. So, this is a battle that Kelly and I have been waging at the federal level, trying to get federal personnel to understand this is absolutely a federal issue. It began as a federal issue with Merrick Garland enlisting the FBI. That's how this started. And then they got sort of savvy and they kind of offloaded it downstream. And so it became localized. So your issue is local, Crystal's issue is local, Jeremy's issue is local. And you're right, in the state of Florida, the superintendent here is kind of a badass, and he's saying, well, we're not gonna accept this. But I have yet to see actual results from that. Like, I get it, you wrote a nasty letter, you're trying to hold people accountable, but I've yet to see recompense. Go ahead, Crystal.
I'm so sorry. There's a little bit of a delay. But what Dan is saying is their hands are somewhat limited because even if they wanted to remove these school board members, the State Board of Educators can't remove them. Only the governor can remove them. And of course, he has to do that as rarely as possible because we also don't want to go down setting a precedent that for political reasons or whatnot, you can just remove people. Now, I realize these aren't political reasons. These are actual violations of ethical standards and code of conduct.
Yeah, I don't want them removed. I want them fined. I want them to pay.
But they owe their purview to do that. So they can withhold the equivalent of the salaries of the school board members from the school district's funds, but the school district can just take money from another bucket. The money is fungible, right? So it's not like they can actually withhold the school board. So there's a lot of difficulties imposing any kind of real consequences at the local level. There's some things they can do, and they've been trying to flex that here in Florida, but that's also why they're emboldened these school board members to push back.
I got a problem with that. Because it's like there are victims with no perpetrators because you can't get the perpetrators because they're untouchable somehow. And that's very frustrating. And that has to be resolved because it will only get worse. The more they realize that they have impunity, the worse it's going to get.
Yeah.
Do you guys, Kelly and Sam, do you guys mind just sharing just briefly what you're hoping to accomplish specifically with specific actions in the executive order that you hope to draft? And the reason I ask that is, there's 23,000 school districts across the country, and it's hard to get, DC's attention unless you're right in the shadow of the Washington Monument there with those 5 districts that get all the attention.
Yeah.
We're out here in Arizona, we're hoping to get attention, but maybe your executive order could help. Well, I'm curious what that is seeking to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. I'm going to pause for actually 32 seconds here, and let's get back to that. Yeah, before we get too far from Jeremy's story, and somebody had mentioned that they just make things up, they kind of do what they want. So I'm going to give you guys a treat. In 32 seconds, I'm going to show you sped up the whole incident at Mesquite Elementary, where I was accused of supposedly trying to arrest and zip tie a principal. If I'll give anybody $10,000, and maybe somebody can loan me $10,000. But if you can see one single incident where I attempted to arrest somebody. But what you're going to hear audio-wise is another judge, who unfortunately wasn't my judge, who watched the entire video, not sped up as you're going to see, but see what he said about it. So contrast what Judge Riojas here says versus the narrative that they went out to the media for. This is going to be interesting, I think.
A couple things I noticed. One, defendant never raised his voice. I listened to the whole tape. He never stood up, which I found very significant because you're right. His size would be intimidating if he stood up and got in your face, but he didn't. He sat down the whole time. That was one thing I was looking for, is what steps he did. I mean, what he did is he disagreed with you. That's not disorderly conduct. That's not rude. That's not threatening. You guys don't get to define how people disagree with you. School districts don't have that right. The citizens have that right.
So, I mean, can you win $10,000? Can you show me where? And it's interesting because in the background, most of the time we were waiting in the office. They had accused us of not letting them leave and all this stuff. Well, we sat there and waited, and you can see in the background, people are going about their daily business. At one point, you see a couple pretty large men walk by. Nobody called and said, "Hey, we're being threatened." So completely false narrative. I'm looking forward to this hearing, Sam, when I can show some of these things and show the DOJ, look, they completely made things up. They really did. Yeah. So, to your question, Dan, which is a great question. We started this. I was arrested, sentenced to 100 days in jail. $10,000 was taken out of my home sale. It was intense persecution. In the meantime, partly for work, partly because they started to go after our kids and other things, we moved from Tucson to Tennessee. So I'm out here. I'm in the appeal period. I'm getting this strange urging not to appeal and not to go to jail. And I'm like, what is this? Well, when they took $10,000 out of our home sale, I'm like, whoa, it was going to be $10,000 to retain a lawyer for an appeal. I'm not going to put my family through this. And they're the criminals, not me. So I'm not going to go to jail. So I haven't talked to anyone else who's done this, but I simply refused to go to jail. Instead, I went to Congress. I went to DC. I started just talking to others, started a loose coalition, which included Seek Smith of Mom and Dad Army and a whole lot of other people, America's Mom, Sharona Bishop. And eventually, I forget how Sam and I got into contact, but Sam really took to this issue, she's not even a targeted parent, and she holds this dear, and she's been amazing. So in, I want to say 2023, I went to Washington, D.C. with several people, and we met with 5 members of Congress, met with their teams, because I had sent an email to Jim Jordan and to others, pretty long email. I think you can see that email on realfreedomtalk.com on the Parents Demanding Justice page. Yeah, it's there. And 2 or 3 days after I sent this email, Jim Jordan's office contacted me and said, "We're really interested in this. We want you to tell us everything you know, and could you come up to Washington, D.C. and meet with our teams?" So as a result, again, on realfreedomtalk.com, on that Parents Demanding Justice Alliance page, you can see there was a report by the Committee on the Judiciary, Special Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Government, on this targeting of parents. So
But things didn't really move. You know, it was kind of an acknowledgement that it had happened. A little bit later, Sam and I just formed Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, and we decided, look, something's got to be done about this. Sam, maybe you can take it from here and talk about. So I asked if you could come to Washington, D.C., because I had gotten us an interview on NTD News, which, by the way, was a fantastic interview. And Sam was doing some work. I think it's a really interesting story how you met Vince Haley and others. Sam, maybe you take it from here.
Okay, so just briefly, I flew into DC, we did the interview, and then that night I was going to dinner with my husband, and we met Vince Haley, who is a very powerful man. He runs the Office of Domestic Policy in the West Wing. So you likely never heard of him, but he actually writes for President Trump, among other things. And so I cornered him and I said, you're the guy. Like, this is domestic policy 101. Like, let's get something done. At the same time, I was talking with Ed Martin, and he agreed to meet with us the next day. And so we had a couple of meetings there. But Dan was asking about the EO and what we are hoping to accomplish. And I think the best way to sum it up, Dan, is if we can get the EO, it will, first of all, acknowledge that these parents exist and that school boards have been misbehaving, right? Secondly, it offers restitution. How? That's a complicated issue because everybody's restitution is going to look completely different. But the federal government is on the hook. And they have to acknowledge that this began under Garland through the FBI as a federal issue. And so the federal government has the funds and can offer restitution to some degree for many of the things that the parents have gone through, at least financially, right? And then finally, we're hoping that the EO can actually provide a little bit more than that in terms of encouraging school boards to behave better. How that, the mechanics of that, you got me. But what I pushed for, in addition to the EO, is actually a ceremony where President Trump acknowledges that these are the parents who stood in the gap for their children. These are the kinds of parents that we want in the United States, that children need, that children deserve. For me, this is a very black and white issue. It's very cut and dry. When you seek to marginalize the parents, you have nefarious ideas about what you want to do to those children. And we are seeing that play out now. And I will not stand by for it. I will not be put off. I will not let that happen. So I think that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
You're on mute, Kelly.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's muted right now.
In prison for 5 days simply because she wouldn't leave the school.
That's my technical glitch there. I'm actually, Sam, thank you so much. And I was actually going to play a clip with me and Sam in it as a transition here. I just hit the wrong button. Getting death threats to kill my children. We're getting doxxed. Our employees were terrified.
In this episode, we're sitting down with Kelly Walker and Sam Sorbo, co-founders of the Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, PDJA. They have put together a dossier detailing actions taken by local authorities to censor, surveil, and pressure parents who protested policies during the COVID-19 pandemic.
They claimed that 3 large fathered had stormed the school. They made us out to be the worst kind of terrorists. I got sentenced to 100 days in jail and $10,000 in fines. I was told I had to scrub my social media and be quiet. That interview with Yanya Kelly, by the way, is just fantastic. And Sam did another one with James O'Keefe. I don't know, maybe you saw it, but it's tremendous. It's incredible. It's My Price is My Life. And they talk about the importance of standing up and how if your price isn't your life, you're not in the fight. You're not, some would say in God's will, because we have to be willing to put it all on the line for what's right. Have any of you guys seen that yet with that interview with James O'Keefe?
I did. It was good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Tell me a little bit about your reactions to it.
I think James was really engaged during the interview and a little bit taken aback by some of the stories that she was relaying. Sam also gave a little background of her Hollywood experience early on. And I thought it was just a really well-rounded capture of the whole Parents Demanding Justice mission.
Yeah, for sure. And I was really glad that she shared a little bit of my story and some others as well. I'm going to play a clip here from Eric Metaxas' show that kind of lays out, for some of you who are watching who may not really kind of understand what happened, this pretty quickly lays out the scenario.
Government targeted innocent parents who were trying to be advocates for their children.
September 29th, 2021, the National School Board Association sent a letter to Joe Biden asking for federal assistance dedicated to these dangerous parents, and this whole domestic terrorist narrative came about. By October 4th, Merrick Garland issued the memo designating parents as domestic terrorists. Then October 18th, there was a letter by 14 attorneys general sent to Garland and Biden citing this National School Board Association letter as a massive fraud. 1 week ago, in a letter dated October 18th, 2021, my fellow attorneys general and I laid out the facts surrounding the massive fraud that the National School Board Association has perpetrated on the American people. In a letter to the Department of Justice, NSBA accused parents throughout the United States of, quote, domestic terrorism and hate crimes, warranting the invocation of the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism.
We've never seen it in our lifetimes. Until the nonsense of COVID and the masking and the mandates started to happen, nobody had ever seen anything like this in our lifetimes. We would never dream that mayors and governors could be so wicked, that school boards could be so wicked. Really, the ugly underbelly of our fellow Americans. We saw it, and it's hideous.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to Eric. He had me on several times. He's very concerned about this issue. I want to play another quick video. This is of another parent, Jennifer Mahuda from Arizona, and they did end up moving, but what she went through was horrendous. Children's book author, school mom, she was put into the county jail for 5 days to quote unquote teach her a lesson. They gave her that written reason why they were quarantining her healthy daughter. They even handcuffed her 16-year-old daughter.
Main takeaway from your story is that this could happen to anybody at any time. So with this, I suppose, do you think it was designed to intimidate parents and people like you from, not standing up against what you see to be clearly something that's happening that's obviously wrong?
Absolutely. The judge even mentioned in our sentencing that she was making an example of us to dissuade other parents from doing what we did. She also is holding us accountable in our sentencing for mean things that strangers said to the principal, which totally outside of our control. I mean, we had people say mean things to us. So the whole thing is just kind of ridiculous. We're being our sentence harsher because of things that were outside of our control, the things that we didn't do, to be set an example of, not for the crime, but for political reasons.
Yes, I think that's completely accurate. As you said, it's a Class 3 misdemeanor is similar to a traffic fine, and you're not going to be dragged through the court system for 8 months and be sent to jail for something like that if it wasn't to pull you up and say, look, here's what's happened to you, here's what's happened to Jennifer.
So I think we have about at least 60 families in our dossier now. I think this is a very small sampling, but what these parents have gone through is just unacceptable on every level. I'm going to try another video here. Let me see. I think this one is also some things about Jennifer. Oh, sorry, that's the static slides, but this is a picture of Jennifer and her daughter, and they were arrested. And it was very, very hard on them. And you can be as brave as you think you want to be. And it's just a tough thing to go through. I'm going to play another video here real quick.
You close schools. And by the way, the impact on that is generational.
You destroyed the lives. You and the other governors that closed schools destroyed the lives of children in doing that.
Schools I did not want to close. And
But you did.
Actually, I was not governor at the time.
But you were lieutenant governor and you were the point person. Do you think the governor made a mistake in closing schools?
We reopened the schools as soon as
Did you
we
think
could get
he
the
made a
teachers- as soon as-
mistake?
Well, if
Do you
I
think he made a
may
mistake?
I answer the question, or is the senator going to filibuster me, sir?
No, you're going to answer my direct question or just say I'm not going to answer you.
No, I'm going to answer
Do you
your
think
question.
it was a good idea? Yes or no, the two choices in this answer. Do you think it was a good idea to close schools?
There was massive spread from children to adults. We were waiting to make sure the teachers
So let me get this straight. You sacrificed the lives of children because maybe they would spread something that you don't know to adults. You thought that was a good idea. That's interesting.
that's
okay. Tell me the science behind why you locked your residents up and did not allow them to go grocery shopping, why you closed your beaches and your parks. I would love you to put that science into this record, because you can give me the nice, happy talk, but those were terrible decisions. And what COVID highlighted more than anything else, by the way, it's why I'm here. I ran for the United States Senate, not because I had this deep desire to be a government politician, but because I was so incensed by the arrogance, by the ignorance, by the lack of common sense among our elected officials that we needed different kinds of people here in Washington, D.C. and other places. So,
should I answer those questions, Chairman?
No, there's no question for you. That was just a
There were
statement.
The moment you react, you're vilified, you're demonized. And I'll tell you something. We, a little coffee shop, we had people coming to us saying, our kids are committing suicide because of these policies, because they're being isolated and ostracized, because in some cases they can't medically wear a mask. Then people come to me and say, I'm deaf or hearing impaired. I'm depressed because now my world is completely silent. I've had people come and say, I was abused and raped and a hand held over my face, and I can't tolerate something on my face. That's what happened at Micah Mountain. A boy jumped off the top of the bleachers and killed himself. A boy had a speech that he wanted to give about his classmate and tell them what they're doing. And he was denied the ability to speak because they shut down that meeting. And then they portrayed us as violent and hostile. Over 200 parents came to speak, to say, you are hurting our children. No child has died of COVID in this county. And somehow, we're the bad guys. All of these things is because of how this has been mismanaged. A pandemic has never, ever been managed like this before. And that's the tragedy. And that's where the school boards need to pay attention and listen. Because they have driven some parents to the point of desperation. Because when your kids are put on suicide watch, and nobody will change, and you go because people have gone to school board meeting after school board meeting, including kids saying, you've got to have some balance in this. And they look at you with no expression on their faces. That's tyranny. We went to protect our children. And we have a duty to do that.
We definitely have a duty to protect our children. And, you know, Crystal, and going over all these stories and talking to so many parents, it's really been moving. And of course, I went through that. My family's been through hell because of this, but it really just gives me goosebumps. The courage that people had to walk into this and oftentimes stand alone. And, you know, Sam said, basically, the government has a responsibility to make this right. You know, today's October 4th, 4 years after that Garland memo was issued. But I'll say this, you know, in the dossier and in some of the stories, even a couple that came in today, the FBI was involved in this. The DOJ was involved in it even before the Garland memo was issued. So one of the big things in the executive order that I want to see is restitution to these parents. It's not the same as reparations. Reparations is a general thing where you say, oh, you know, my ancestors were harmed and therefore you need to pay me. No, this is very specific because, for instance, in my case, I was cancel cultured out of my job, which, by the way, was out of Seattle. So it wasn't exactly a conservative organization. I had huge legal fees, lost my home, so on and so forth. People have lost. What I say is these families need to be restored to the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness they had before their own government went to war against them. I mean, does this resonate with you? Tell me about some of the things that this has cost you and your family.
It resonates on such a deep level. I mean, I watch you speak, I hear these other stories, and I just get so infuriated about the abuse that we're sustaining and the loss that's cost us. And not only the material loss that you can point to and say specifically, I lost this amount because of this, but the lost opportunity cost that I don't even know what that is. Prior to this happening, prior to confronting the school district about inappropriate books in their school libraries, I was nominated and I received the #1 online educator of the year for the University of Florida system. I was on a trajectory for my professional path that I was doing excellent, and I only saw good things for me, and all of that has come to a halt. I don't think I'm going to win any more recognitions, prizes, raises, et cetera, et cetera. And how do you quantify that? I don't know. I would do it again. It's the right thing to do. I don't need restitution to know it was the right thing to do. And I would do it if it cost me nothing, but restitution would be really, really nice. But it's not just about me. It's about the cost that it's to my child as well. In this recent incident, you would think that my original complaint that was at the school teacher was bullying, quote unquote, or discriminating against my son. And that was my charge. The way the school has reacted to that is that they've allowed the students and the school's faculty and employees to continue that bullying of my son, and far worse than it was of my original complaint. They allowed the students to organize a walkout where the students carried signs calling my son a Nazi, and the school condoned this. And now when I speak to the school, they say there's nothing they can do about it because the signs didn't specifically say his name. I said, but there was a petition that the students were circulating that they put on the school chalkboards to organize the walkout. And when you click on the petition, it was calling my son a Nazi and all these reasons why he deserved to be treated in the manner that he had. I said, clearly there's a connection with my son in this labeling of Nazi, but they're not going to do anything about it because they don't want to do anything about it. And they're happy to destroy not just my future, but my son's. As he applies for colleges this year, how is that going to affect him? Again, that opportunity cost. I don't know. When you when you Google his name, the first thing comes up are the community activists posts about my son with all these horrible slurs. How does that affect his scholarship?
It's so very unfair. It's unfair to the kids. It's unfair to us as adults because, I've been in the position over the last 4 years of having to apply for jobs. And, you look at first, all this stuff is on page 1. Fortunately, it seems to be going a little lower now, but you're applying for a job and you're portrayed as a domestic terrorist. You're put in the worst possible light. I'm hoping too that the administration, the DOJ, can help us put some pressure on the search engines and the media who out and out lied about these things. I mean, lied. And it's so important that the government see the little people, those of us who aren't wealthy, we're not famous, we're just everyday people. I'm going to wrap up pretty soon here, but I want to play a video. I found this video so very interesting, Crystal, because Bill Maher, who is, I'd say, a classical liberal, he hit the nail on the head with what they were doing. So a lot of this started over COVID, over the masking policies. It went into CRT, it went into transgender theory, but I thought this was very interesting at the time.
It's time to do what a growing list of countries have done and announced we're going back to something more like normal, beginning with recognizing that what we're doing to kids is unnecessary and horrible, and I don't even like kids. But making kids who have a COVID survivability rate of 99.98% mask up like bandits. Unfortunately, the thing that's getting stolen is their education, their sanity, and their social skills. A study this week from a professor at Johns Hopkins concluded that the lockdowns we all suffered through had little impact in reducing COVID deaths. Okay, that's kind of a big one to get wrong. I'm just asking, how much wrong do you get to be while still holding the default setting for people who represent the science?
I'll tell you, they were wrong back then, and we knew it. And I was saying back then, forcing a child to wear a mask, and in our case in Southern Arizona, in 110, 115 degree heat, is child abuse. And I never wavered from that. And this is why they hated me, this is why they hated some of us, because it was all about money. It was getting millions of dollars from the CDC. It's just, well, let's just ride this out. We won't lose our money. So our kids have been sold for money. And in your case, some of the people who do these horrible things are doubling down because they care more about ideologies and their Marxist illusion of a paradise that will never be, because communism's never worked, they're willing to destroy other people, and a stop has to be put to this. And I'll tell you this, Crystal, Sam was on. There are many others working on this with us. In fact, I showed a picture, and I'm going to pull that up again here, but Roger Stone went and talked to President Trump on behalf of Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, which I was very, very touched by. And I want to show you real quick. Whoops. Let's see. I want to show you President Trump's face as Roger Stone is telling him about this. Very concerned. You can see it there.
Yeah.
And I do believe President Trump is very concerned about this. And Pam Bondi, Brian Glenn from Real America's Voice has been a great friend and ally. John Solomon, a lot of people in the media. Steve Bannon's had me on and Sam on several times. We have a lot of people advocating for you as parents. And Brian Glenn asked recently, he asked Pam Bondi, put the microphone in front of her. It looked like he was on the tarmac somewhere. And Pam said, this issue is very important to us and very important to the president. So my challenge to the administration would be, we believe that, and we're going to put our trust in you, but we want you to restore these parents' lives. And I share what you said, Crystal, because my wife and I, absolutely, we'd do it again. At one point, we walked away from a potential $2 million settlement. Why? Because it came with a gag order. They would have shut me up. And if I had taken that, I couldn't be here advocating for all of you today. And I could be having a nice house, be living out somewhere in the country where I'm away from all this. But I don't think I could live with myself. And I went to my wife, and at the time, our business is being attacked. Our coffee shop ended up getting shut down and stolen. I had been cancel cultured out of my job. Like, we needed it. But I went home to my wife and I told her about the settlement, and I knew what she was going to say, but she's absolutely not. That's not why we're doing this. So I want to commend you. I want to commend the other parents who are standing tall. And I want to leave everybody with some hope, because look, I'm just a normal person. I'm a dad, but I am not going to quit. I'm not going to give up until we get the justice that we deserve. Sam is wonderful. She's amazing. Great mom, great advocate for education. She's not going to give up. We've got Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, Mom Army, Dad Army. We've got a lot of people working on this. We have some real power punchers. So look for good things to come. And I'm flying out to DC on Monday. Sharona Bishop and I are going to meet with Ed Martin again. I know Ed Martin cares about this, but he's also got more than anybody should have on their plate. And one thing that's happened is when the Trump administration came in, Crystal, some of the people left because, never Trumpers, and others are still in the administration that are trying to thwart things. But then I know, in speaking with Harmeet Dillon and others, they're looking for lawyers to come into the DOJ. So they are understaffed, and I do believe they care. So it's hard for me sometimes to see things on social media that are very cynical and sardonic about them, because I do believe they care. But my challenge is this: President Trump, sign that executive order. Look, we can look into all the legalities. We can trace everything. We do need to hold people accountable, starting with Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco. But right now, immediately, these families need help. Number one, they need honored publicly. And I hope, Mr. President, that you will do this. You'll honor them very publicly. Like in my situation, in my case, I still have my oldest son who hasn't talked to me for years because I was portrayed in this way by the media. You've gone through things. You need to be honored for what you've done. All these parents, Dan, who was on with us a moment ago, all these parents who've gone through these things, they need to be honored. But beyond that, the purpose of the government is to protect our life, liberty, property, and pursuit of happiness. That's their job. That's why we instituted. That's why we have this social contract. This is why we instituted the government that we have, to protect those things. But when that government itself takes those things away from you, it's very, very basic. They have an obligation to bring it back, to provide restitution. And I know it wasn't the current administration that did that, and yet they represent those organizations. So one thing I also had hoped to see on October 4th was that President Trump and Pam Bondi would issue statements officially apologizing on behalf of the DOJ and the federal government to these parents, symbolically, knowing that they didn't do those things. And I know they're very, very busy. I didn't see that happen today. I think it is going to happen, though. and I'll be going back. I'll be gone Monday for much of the week, and then I'll be flying back on the 15th and the 16th. So I've done all of this on my own dime. Once in a while, people donate, which is very helpful. If you'd like to donate, just go to realfreedomtalk.com or samsorbo.com. You'll find a link there to donate to Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, or you can see at the bottom of the screen if you want to donate via Gifts and Go to Freedom Talk, you can do that. But Crystal, thank you so much for fighting the good fight, and thanks for coming on with us today. Any last comments before we end up here? I'm going to end up with a little pitch for Freedom Talk Magazine.
Sure, Kelly. I just want to say I have never been more optimistic about this situation as I have been these past few weeks. I know that your life, I know that you could never imagine that you'd be talking to the people that you're talking to right now just a couple of years ago. And when I reflect back, my whole network fell apart with that first newspaper publishing saying that I was trying to ban books, LGBTQ books or whatnot. My whole life fell apart and I had nobody. I had no contacts. That was only 2 years ago. And from that point until now I'm speaking to people like you. I'm speaking to people like Sam Sorbo. There's a potential that there's going to be an executive order that my name is going to be attached to. Like, this is just, it blows my mind to know that the Attorney General of Florida knows my name, my first name, and can speak to my case is just so encouraging. And I will tell you, when this first started about 2 years ago or so, I was completely alone. And my dad up in Pennsylvania had his church prayer group praying for me. And somebody at his church came up to him and said, I had a dream last night and I saw your daughter standing behind Donald Trump. And my dad, called me, told me about it. And I laughed. I was like, oh, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I can't even get my local congressman to listen to me. And here I am. I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but I'm thinking more likely that this could absolutely happen than it was 2 years ago. And it's just mind blowing because Trump wasn't even in office when they had that dream. And here we are, like, that could come true. And I'm just so encouraged by it.
Yeah, we aren't going to stop till it does. And I do want to see you and your daughter standing behind President Trump. I've envisioned that myself, and we're not going to quit until that happens. If I have to chain myself to the DOJ and insist and go on a hunger strike, I'm not going to give up. So President Trump, you're very strong-willed. You're wonderful. You're a great leader, but I'm also very strong-willed on behalf of these parents because I love each and every one of these parents and these families, and I believe you do too. So I do hope we will see that moment when we're all standing behind President Trump. He's signing a big, beautiful executive order for parents. Really, honestly, in the scope of the federal budget, it's very, very little money, and it would really restore some families to a path. And we're going to keep working as Parents Demanding Justice Alliance to get people's records cleared and do everything we can. So, Crystal, publicly here, you and your kids are heroes. We love you. You're not alone. And any of you who are watching out there who've been through these things, you're not alone there either. Just go to realfreedomtalk.com and reach out to us. As I have time, I'll talk to you in person. Sam will talk to you and we'll help you out. So keep hopeful. I think it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, watch for me on the news because I'm going to be chaining myself to the White House fence or something. It has to happen. It has to happen. And I believe there are good people.
God has a plan for all of us, and God is going to restore us all. And it's been such a blessing to get to meet other strong people of faith, people of character, people who are willing to say no to an abusive system. People are willing to stand up. A lot of people wonder, what would I have been like if I were in Nazi Germany? And now I know I would definitely have been speaking out. And that is such an encouragement to me and to my family that I can be like, yeah, I would have not gone along with it. So you wouldn't have gone along with it either. And now I know who those people are who wouldn't have and those who would. And it's a blessing to have that discernment.
I absolutely wouldn't have. I dug my feet in when they first said mandate and put on a mask. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. So stay strong. I just want to honor and praise all of those who've been strong, who've stayed in the fight. I know you've taken a lot of hits. Some of us know that any one of us could have suffered Charlie Kirk's fate. There have been many nights I've woken up in the middle of the night.
I'm wearing his freedom shirt.
Nice. I've woken up in the middle of the night wondering if my life's going to end in martyrdom, and I hope not, because I have a family and kids. But
fear him who can kill your body, but fear more of you who can kill your soul, right?
Yep. Well, speaking of family, I'm going to get back to them. We got a little fire in the back, and Crystal, God bless you and your family. And I'm just going to end with a little video. Thanks for coming on tonight.
America's founders warned
Thanks for
that
having
without
me.
knowledge and virtue, no nation can remain free. Yet through the steady infiltration of Marxist ideology, we have been stripped of both, and we are no longer a moral and educated people. To save America, we must spark nothing less than a national renaissance. That's why you need Freedom Talk Magazine, the journal of truth and virtue. We cultivate enlightened thinking and principled living, offering unique insights into the issues and remarkable people defining our world. More than headlines, we craft the very ideas that drive them, engaging minds, sparking brave dialogue, and influencing current events. Freedom Talk shapes tomorrow's news at the headwaters of culture with an unflinching commitment to free speech and America's founding principles. And with new collaborations, like our partnership with Mike Lindell and others, we're now positioned in front of millions of freedom-loving people across TV, streaming, and grassroots networks. Sign up today for your free subscription to Freedom Talk Magazine and join the new American Renaissance. Click to listen.
Click to watch.
Safeguard your liberty.
Click to shop.
Get insights that put you ahead of the news.
Get special offers.
Donate to your favorite causes.
Understand your constitutional rights.
Discover exceptional people.
Watch documentaries.
Get awesome stuff for learning.
Get your business in front of millions.
Deepen your spiritual life.
Subscribe now to Freedom Talk Magazine, the journal of truth and virtue. It's all free